Hello and welcome to Crooked House Gaming. Here at Crooked House Gaming, we like to explore the gameplay of simulation games, usually through a series of Let's Plays. In this episode, we will continue to explore the gameplay of Democracy 4. Democracy 4 is a political sim that lets you choose the role of a world leader and govern a country. If this sounds like something that you'd be interested in, be sure to hit that like button, and if you're new here, welcome, and be sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any future episodes. Today, we are going to be continuing as the Prime Minister of Canada. When I hit that button, we will be entering the first term of our second year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's see how we did. Unemployment is up. Baking gay cakes. There is an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. A baker owned by a religious couple has been taken to court for discrimination after they refused to bake a celebration cake for a same-sex couple on religious grounds, given their church's disapproval of homosexuality. The law clearly needs clarifying in cases like these. Support the bakers. Surely it's a basic principle of running a business that you can turn away custom that you do not want. Are we really going to force people to produce work they find blasphemous so as to not offend a customer? This is clear provocation, as there are plenty of other bakers who would happily have baked the cake. Support the same-sex couple. Discrimination is discrimination, regardless of one's religion. It's a very slippery slope if we allow people to claim that they turn customers away for religious reasons. Even if this conflicts with the law, they are free to disapprove of the lifestyle of the couple, but they cannot legitimately refuse to do business with them. While we are the Radical Reform Party, I am going to support the bakers, as there are several other bakeries that would have happily baked the cake. The religious are happy at plus 10%, the liberals are unhappy at negative 8%. Budget report. The International Credit Rating Agency rates our government as a double B. This is a bad sign and is pushing up the rate of interest we pay on our debt. We must address this. Polls report. The polls are optimistic. If an election was held tomorrow, we suspect we would get 79% of the vote. Election report. Our party, the Radical Reform Party, is getting more support. In the last quarter, 573,522 new people signed up to be members. Economic forecast. Good news. The global economy is doing well, and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers is best described as trustworthy. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Let's continue. We have 20 political capital to spend. We still are working on a respiratory disease. We are still working on obesity. We are still working on gig economy, and we are still working on environmental protests. Let's take a look at our policies. Biofuel subsidies. Biofuels can reduce oil demand by mixing ethanol derived from corn with petrochemical fuel. This generally popular with the environmentalists. Farmers who earn money producing corn for biofuel use also benefit. Biofuel with a higher mix of ethanol can be subsidized through tax breaks. This will reduce oil demand. This will increase farmers. This will increase farmer membership. This will reduce the CO2 emissions. The environmentalists will increase. Motorists will increase. Farmers' incomes will increase, and the food price will go up. Let's implement this. This is 92% popular with the vote. I'm looking at this to reduce CO2 emissions. I'm looking at this also to help reduce the environmental protests. Let us raise this all the way to the end, and let's apply the changes. We have 10 political capital to spend. CO2 campaign. Government can pass laws and make spending plans, but can also tackle the issue of climate change by actively urging its citizens to reduce their emissions voluntarily. A public information campaign can persuade citizens not to waste energy and to choose environmentally friendly products, means of transportation, and eat less meat. This will increase environmentalist membership. This will increase plant-based diet. This will reduce car usage, and this will reduce CO2 emissions. This is 91% popular with the vote. We're going to raise it all the way to the end, and we will apply the changes. We have 4 political capital to spend. Respiratory disease, asthma, and other lung diseases are a serious problem amongst our citizens. Not only does this obviously severely impact their quality of life, but it is also reducing our productivity and filling our hospital beds. Poor air quality, possibly caused by factory pollution and car fumes together with smoking, are likely the causes. Very close to a start trigger. Carpooling campaign. It often takes encouragement for people to come together and make better use of resources at hand. Carpooling is a good example of that, so campaign will make people realize how fun and helpful it can be to carpool, all while reducing traffic congestion. And if you still end up in a traffic jam, at least you have people you can talk to while you're waiting. 62% popular with the vote. I'm also looking at this as a way to reduce pollution and therefore tackle our respiratory disease. We will bring this too high. We will apply the changes. We have 2 political capital to spend. Environmental protests. There is a widespread movement of environmental protests all over the country driven by concerns about climate change and pollution. Protesters are disrupting daily life by blocking roads and city centers to draw attention to their cause. The environment, a general measure of the quality of the environment, including air quality, but also measuring noise pollution, litter, water quality, and many other measures of pollution. We are basically trying to focus on respiratory disease, but we are also having environmental protests. Perhaps we can look at something like pollution controls. Pollution controls, restriction on what chemicals and emissions can be released into the atmosphere. Controls reduce pollution and increase health, and possibly at the cost of economic competitiveness. Right now we are focused on restrictions and fines. We will put 2 political capital in this and increase it to major fines. We will apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we are at the end of our first term of our second year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering the second term of our second year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's see how we did. Demand from a donor. One of your major party donors has ideas about policies. Raphael Green is insisting that you placate them by implementing a specific policy, plastic tax. If you refuse to do so, they will abandon their financial support of the Radical Reform Party. Let us implement the policy as requested, as I was looking at that myself. Plastics tax. Plastic waste is a major concern among environmentalists due to the very long time that waste plastic can remain in our ecosystem. A tax on plastic production ensures the environmentally friendly alternatives are chosen instead when suitable. This is 0% popular with the vote, but environmentalists will like this. Environment will improve, the oil demand will go down, the GDP will also be affected. We're going to raise it to about high, and we apply the changes. Spouse scandal. Your spouse has been reported to have taken a private jet to go shopping abroad. As leader of the government, this high-profile abuse of power will not be well received by the electorate. Everyone is unhappy at -10%. The socialists are unhappy at -12%, and you are seen as trustworthy at -13%. Credit rating downgraded. The major international credit agency has downgraded the status of your government debt. This is likely to have a knock-on effect as foreign companies become wary of investing in our economy, and it will also result in the interest rate that we pay on our debt rising. There's a good chance that this will upset our capitalist voters too. We should take action to regain credibility with the ratings agency by reducing the level of debt as soon as possible. Your current credit rating is now a B. The capitalists are unhappy at -5%. The GDP is down at -3%, and business confidence is down at -15%. Situation imminent. Our data is showing that we have a potentially bad situation, bureaucracy on our hands if we do not act soon. Budget report. Our credit rating is worryingly just a B. We need to fix this either through growing our GDP, cutting expenditure, or increasing taxation. Economic forecast. Good news. The global economy is doing well, and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as trustworthy. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Polls report. The people are indifferent to your government. We estimate getting 50% of the vote in an election. We have 9 political capital to spend. An unusual policy designed to boost the economy immediately, where the government effectively prints free money and hands it out to citizens for them to spend. Normally the amount is fixed and can be withheld from those on high incomes. Like all money printing, it is inflationary. This will take 0 quarters to implement. This will increase inflation. This will increase the GDP. This will increase poor earnings. This will increase socialism. This will lower poverty. This will increase the poor, and currency strength will be reduced. But I'm going to implement this policy. Helicopter money is 86% popular with the vote. Let us do this to high. It's going to increase our inflation. Let's apply the changes. We have 1 political capital to spend. We will put the last political capital into recycling. Recycling. Supporters of recycling argue that dumping waste in landfills just isn't a long-term solution, and the government needs to show the way by providing facilities to recycle as many waste materials as possible. This might include recycling newspapers, cardboard, bottles, and even some plastic. This is 100% popular with the vote. We're going to use our last political capital, and we will raise it to about there. Let us apply the changes. We have 0 political capital left to spend, and thus we are at the end of our second term of our second year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering the third term of our second year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's see how we did. Poverty is down. There is an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. Rewrite school history books. Many of the textbooks used in school history lessons are outdated and reflect a somewhat generous view of our country's past and its achievements. Campaigners are suggesting major changes to the way children are taught our history to evaluate our past with a modern attitude. Rewrite the textbooks. It is quite shocking just how biased the dated textbooks are in our school. Judging by these books, our history is suspiciously male, racially pure, and without fault, whereas we know the real picture is extremely different. We cannot continue whitewashing our history and teaching our children things things we know to be untrue. Leave the textbooks alone. This is simple middle-class liberal guilt attempting to rewrite history. You cannot judge the great statesperson and military leaders of our past through the lens of modern thinking. Society was different back then and their behavior was perfectly acceptable at the time. What sort of government rewrites our proud history? We are the Radical Reform Party and thus we are going to rewrite the textbooks. The Liberals are happy at plus 9%, parents are happy at plus 7%, education increases at plus 10%, the Patriots are unhappy at negative 12%, and liberalism is up at plus 3%. Budget report, our credit rating is worryingly just a B. We need to fix this either through growing our GDP, cutting expenditure, or increasing taxation. Election report, our party, the Radical Reform Party, is getting more popular. In the last quarter, we added 75,469 new members and 75,469 new activists. Economic forecast, good news, the global economy is doing well and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Cabinet report, the loyalty of your ministers can best be described as trustworthy. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Polls report, the people are indifferent to your government. We estimate getting 51% of the vote in an election. We have 18 political capital to spend. Let's take a look at policy. We do not have body cameras in Canada. Let us implement body cameras. Body cameras, the compulsory wearing of cameras by law enforcement workers, is a way to ensure that the workers stick to the law themselves and act in a respectful and honorable way. When engaging with members of the public without cameras, corruption and bullying complaints against the police are not so easily dealt with. Liberals will increase, state employees will decrease, racial tension will go down, conservatives will go down, trade unionists will go down, and corruption will go down. This is 94% popular with the vote. We will put this too high. We will apply the changes. We have 6 political capital to spend. Car emissions limit. Setting legal limits on exhaust fumes helps to reduce air pollution, especially in cities, but it's unpopular with motorists who look upon it as yet more bureaucracy and tax. This is 60% popular with the vote. I am looking at this because of our respiratory disease. This will lower CO2 emissions. This will also improve our environment. We will use 2 political capital for this and we will apply the changes. We have 4 political capital to spend. Pollution controls, restriction on what chemicals and emissions can be released into the atmosphere. Controls reduce pollution and increase health, possibly at the cost of economic competitiveness. This is only 7% popular with the vote. Let us bump it all the way to the end. We will apply the changes. We have 3 political capital to spend. Microgeneration grants. These grants are given to citizens to help subsidize the cost of energy. Microgeneration systems such as solar panels and wind turbines. This is a good way to take advantage of some people's desire to make a personal step towards cleaner and greener energy and will increase the country's overall energy efficiency. This is 100% popular with the vote. This will lower our CO2 emissions. This will affect the energy industry, but this will improve the environment and will make our country more energy efficient. Let us go all the way to the end. We will use 3 political capital. We will apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend and thus we are at the end of the 3rd term of our 2nd year of our 3rd term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering the 4th term of our 2nd year of our 3rd term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's see how we did. Education is up. Single adoptions. There is an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. Singles currently have a hard time adopting a child in our country. In the past, it was hard for single parents, but nowadays it has been easier for them to combine having a child and a career at the same time. So for those who want a child but cannot find nor want a partner, adoption should be made easier. Change the requirements. Singles deserve the same rights as couples to adopt a child. Ease the requirement for single adoptions with daycare and flexible work time. Singles should have a chance to raise and love a child too. Keep the requirements. Adopted children need a stable home and 2 parents. While some single parents can manage to raise a child on their own, they often find themselves in trouble, which would cause even more harm to the adopted child. We are the Radical Reform Party and times have changed, so we are going to change the requirements to allow single parents to adopt children. Equality is up at 5%. Liberalism is up at 5%. Parents are happy at plus 7% and the Conservatives are unhappy at negative 5%. Budget report, our credit rating is worryingly just a B. We need to fix this either through growing our GDP, cutting expenditure, or increasing taxation. Election report, our party, the Radical Reform Party, is getting more support. In the last quarter, 177,002 new people signed up to be members. Economic forecast, good news, the global economy is doing well and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Cabinet report, the loyalty of your ministers can best be described as trustworthy. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Polls report, the people are indifferent to your government. We estimate getting 55% of the vote vote in an election. We have 18 political capital to spend. Respiratory disease, asthma, and other lung diseases are a serious problem amongst our citizens. Not only does this obviously severely impact their quality of life, but also reducing our productivity and filling hospital beds. Poor air quality, possibly caused by factory pollution and car fumes, together with smoking, are likely the cause. Let's look at environment. The environment, a general measure of the quality of the environment, including air quality, but also a measure of noise pollution, litter, water quality, and many other measures of pollution. We're also having problems with environmental protests. The GDP is affected by this. Tobacco tax. Despite the failure of tobacco companies to admit it, there is a good reason to believe that smoking has a negative effect on health. This is used as a justification for taxing tobacco. Cynics point out that the government benefits hugely from a tax on a product it's supposedly against. Health campaigners encourage the tax as a way to encourage a more healthy population. This is not popular with the vote at all. We are going to use 16 political capital and increase the tobacco tax to 48%. So raise roughly $0.75 billion. Let us apply the changes. We have 2 political capital to spend. Car emission limits. Setting legal limits on exhaust fumes helps reduce air pollution, especially in cities, but it's unpopular with motorists who look upon it as yet more bureaucracy and tax. We are still addressing respiratory disease. I'm going to use our last 2 political capital to go all the way to the end, and I'm going to apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we are at the end of our 4th term, of our 2nd year, of our 3rd term as Prime Minister of Canada. And we are at the end of this episode. Thank you so much for stopping by our cricket house. If you like what you saw, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you want to follow our future episodes. It really helps us out. Have a great week. See you soon.